This week, we saw a historic move in Congress, with the House just narrowly passing this bill. Now, since the last video I made, there have been several amendments made to this bill, and so the changes to federal benefits are a little bit different moving forward. There's been a ton of information online, and so my goal today is to give you the most up-to-date information that we have from our sources and how you can be planning for these changes financially. I'll also talk about the new round of VSIPs that have been starting to float around, and I'll show you guys why exactly this bill may actually float through the Senate faster than normal. So make sure you stay around for the whole conversation today, and without wasting any time, we're going to jump right on in. So obviously, the first one here is the change from a high 3 formula to a high 5 formula. This has to do with the federal pension, as many of you know, and it's gotten a lot of attention from federal employees because obviously this would reduce your guaranteed pension that you would get because it's using your last 5 years of salary instead of just the last highest 3. Now, initially the consensus was going to be that this is going to be passed immediately, effective for anyone retiring this year as well. And then we saw notice that they were changing this to 2027, 2028, and so anyone retiring prior to that would be in the clear. But now, as recently as yesterday, through advocacy, there is a new version of the bill that has come out that now eliminates this change altogether. So we are seeing that the high 3 formula is going to remain in place for federal employees. So obviously that's pretty good news for everyone, as the pension calculation should remain the same. This was indeed a very last minute effort that they were able to get passed. And we also had this conversation around federal employees needing to increase their pension contribution. Everybody across the board was going to be 4.4%. That too has been removed from the bill altogether, although there are some other changes we'll talk about in a minute. Now, this next one is regarding the elimination of the FERS Annuity Supplement. This is what we refer to as Social Security Light, because it kicks in and kind of bridges that time frame where you can't quite file for Social Security yet because you're not 62. And so depending on what your salary looks like, this can be $10,000 a year, $20,000 a year. For a lot of our clients, it's $20-something thousand per year that they would be getting between 57 and all the way to 62. So about $100,000 of income. Now, this is another that we thought was going to have an immediate effective date. And the good news around this is that we are now seeing this being pushed off all the way out to January of 2028. So this is really great news for anyone who took the DRP or Avera and is going to be separating from service this year. Currently, as the bill is written, it does not seem like the FERS supplement is going to be pulled from you. It sounds like you're going to be able to continue to have that benefit, and it's only going to apply to new retirees after January 2028. Now, despite the fact that it is good news, I still stand by what I said in my last video, that it is prudent for us to have a financial plan that focuses on cash flow. If you've seen our other videos, I talk about cash flow a lot because it truly is the heartbeat of retirement, and it is the way that we support our lives. So the dollars coming in, dollars going out. So I encourage folks to be thinking about what their budget looks like, regardless of what could happen. It's a good time to take a look at your spend rates. We've had pretty significant inflation over the last couple of years, and it may be possible that you're not fully dialed into what your required expenses are every single month. This is a good opportunity to go in there, crunch the numbers, see what it costs to live your life, because you're going to need that number to figure out what it's going to take to live your retirement. There's the added benefit of understanding whether you can afford to maybe save a little bit more money in your checking and savings these days. Guys, cash in the bank is already taxed. It's money that is not stuck in a retirement account if you're too young. So with this change, or with any other possible change, the more cash that you have in your savings account, the better that you can overcome any kind of surprise expense or any other changes that might affect you. And the next one that we have here is also some good news. So as it relates to FEHB, we were very worried about this voucher model that was going to come into place, which effectively was going to increase the out-of-pocket expense for federal employees. That seems to have been pulled from the bill altogether, although they do have other provisions for FEHB, but mostly in line of making sure that people who are on the plan are actually qualified to be on the plan. So there's some additional administrative requirements that are going to be in place to make sure that people get to keep FEHB the way they should. Now, this one too, going back to prudent financial planning, just because we've got good news on FEHB doesn't mean that healthcare costs aren't continuing to be a problem. I've been doing retirement planning for federal employees for a long time, and what is universally true is that taking care of your health and the cost of healthcare, whether it's the care itself, the insurance to provide for yourself, that rises in cost much faster than everything else. So in the business, we know that healthcare inflation is usually about twice the rate of normal inflation. And that's something really important as you're factoring in how are you going to afford your retirement once you're no longer earning a salary. Now, this next one is this interesting one here where we're talking about at-will employment. I'm not going to spend too much time here because this really has to do with new federal hires coming down the pipeline. And so just know that this is something that still is being considered, where you effectively will choose to either pay a higher contribution to the retirement system and get to keep your civil service protection, or you're looking at an at-will employment, but then being able to contribute less. Now, earlier I mentioned that we may actually see this bill float through the Senate much easier and quicker than other bills. Why is that? Most bills need at least 60 votes from the Senate to be able to pass. This is called a supermajority vote. But this bill that federal employees are facing, it's different. This is what we call a budget reconciliation bill. And in essence, there's a special rule that allows certain budget-related bills, like ones that have to do with taxes or spending or federal benefits, to pass only with a simple majority vote. In other words, 51. So if we were to envision that this is the Senate schematics, where we've got all of the seats available for vote here, generally speaking, we have to have essentially this many votes to be able to pass any specific vote, okay? This is the 60 votes that are usually required. But in a circumstance that we're facing with this bill, all that would be needed is more something like this, okay? This is an example of how it may be much easier for the Senate to actually pass this bill without too much negotiation. Now, it is important to know that it is not completely final yet. It does have to go through Senate approval before it gets signed into law. But you should understand as a federal employee that the way they are pushing this through Senate gives it a higher probability of being passed without much friction. This is especially true because the House and Senate are now both dominated by one party. So not every bill qualifies for this, but this one does. It essentially fast tracks Senate's ability to get this thing passed and actually turn it into law. Now let's talk about these VSIPs for a moment. There are a variety of different agencies that are now starting to come out with these programs with approved VSIP, so $25,000 for somebody to take and leave. So I've had clients tell me, hey, this has come our way. Do you think we should take this? So let's work through an example so you can understand how to be thinking about this as well. So if we're looking at this and we have a federal employee who either through the DRP or Avera is looking at a retirement date or separation date, either of September 30th or December 31st, depending on where you are. And then let's say they're offered this VSIP. So now they get the incentive of maybe $25,000 to be able to leave, but that comes with the condition that you've got to get out probably here very, very soon, presumably as soon as June. So that effectively means that you're no longer receiving your salary for the rest of the year that you would have been employed had you stayed. But you will instead receive a check for $25,000 and you get to just walk out immediately. So the way to be thinking about this is $25,000 greater than, less than, or equal to 4 to 6 months of my salary, because that's what I would be receiving depending on how long I would be staying. So for most people, the answer is going to be that, hey, this $25,000 is probably less than my salary. Because the other thing we have to remember is that you're also, if you're making TSP contributions, you're getting TSP matching contributions as well. So when you combine all of these factors, it's more than likely a financially stronger thing for you if you actually hang out, don't take the VSIP, and continue to stay things as is. Now, there's other risks to consider, of course, which we're not going to get into in this video. And you also have to think about whether you can hang out mentally. Okay, there's a lot of change going on in the way that business is being done in the federal government. And so think about whether the juice is worth the squeeze for you. Now, remember that a VSIP, just like your salary, is still taxable income. So you're not walking away with $25,000 in your pocket. You're still going to be taxed on that money. So you will have a take-home amount from that $25,000 that will be less. So folks, I hope this was helpful. I encourage you to share this with your colleagues because there's a lot of misinformation out there. I have been seeing things come out left and right that are really just speculation and a lot of fear creating in this community. And so if you can help spread the word about what's actually written in the bill right now, we're going to continue to provide updates. I haven't done so many videos lately, but if you sign up to our newsletter from our website, thefedcorner.com, we do put emails out more frequently than we make these videos. So I hope this was helpful, and until next time, stay wise and stay wealthy.